Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club. Nathan Shields here with my good buddy and partner, Adam Robin. How you doing, man?
Charged up, man.
That's right.
Glad to
Yeah,
be
it's a
back.
new year, and I have to apologize for listeners. Some people are complaining that their drive time's a little boring because I've missed a few weeks on the podcast, and yeah, it's my fault. I decided to take a vacation, but now we're back at it in 2024.
That's right, baby. You take the greatest show away from the people just they they revolt, you know?
Right. Well, hopefully they haven't found a different podcast in my stead. Hopefully you guys will
Yeah.
stay with me. Today we want to talk about how to approach 2024 to make it
Yeah.
super successful, right? And something that Adam and I did, we finally met each other. Haven't met each other. We've been working together for years, four plus years now, and haven't met each other yet. But we finally met each other in person in Tempe, Arizona over the holidays, and we're able to do some annual strategic planning for the coaching business. And thought that maybe going over some of those aspects of the annual strategic planning session would be appropriate and valuable for those listeners to the podcast. So today we'll break that down a little bit. We'll also talk about how to prioritize appropriately, how to set goals for this 2024 to make it ultimately successful, significant growth in your practices for this upcoming year. I'll just start with this. What did you take away? And I'll get in a little bit into the nuts and bolts of the annual strategic plan session that we went through, but what did you take away from that?
Yeah. So, I'm a young practice owner. So I haven't been in this game for very long. And so I've actually done my own annual strategic planning forever.
Sure.
So I've never had anybody else be the host or the moderator.
Right.
So it was a new experience for me, which it was awesome.
Well, talk about that with me a little bit. Going from doing it by yourself in the past for your own business to having a separate person lead out on that strategic planning session, because
Yeah.
that's something that I did the same thing. So when I was a younger owner, I would kind of do my own SWOT analysis. SWOT is SWOT, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to see what was coming, what I wanted to do, and what was upcoming in the next year. And it wasn't until Will and I were probably in our fifth or sixth year that we had third person, a separate party, come in, and our mentor led us through that process. And it was valuable to have an outside voice to lead it and kind of question a little bit of what we were thinking. So, what do you think the difference was between you just doing it by yourself versus having someone else kind of like me take you through it?
Yeah. So a few things. One, over the last 3 to 4 years, my company has steadily grown
Well, yeah.
pretty significantly.
Yeah, you're
So
on your third clinic here soon.
yeah. So like my the annual strategic plans have become more and more intense,
Mm,
like harder to do because there's way more moving parts
yeah.
and there's more people involved. And so the preparation for that has been a big challenge for me.
Mm.
Right. And so like I kind of felt like, especially this past year, like I felt like there was a little more pressure on me to deliver. Right. But what was cool about doing it with you was like I felt really relaxed. I felt like I could kind of take the back seat and let the process work. And I felt like I was able to be in a more creative, passive state with you, as opposed to more of a like a rule follower, like moderating the meeting.
I could see that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, every year that I do it, at the end of the meeting or at the end of the call or the meeting with my team, I'm like, man, we've got to get somebody to do this next year. And then I'll end up doing it again. We've got to get somebody else to do this next year, like every single year. So like one year I'm gonna hire you to come do it for us.
I can see exactly what you're talking about, where if you are the owner and you're doing the moderating, then your brain's going the entire time because you're thinking
Mhm.
about what you're doing now and what's the next step in this process of planning things out. And unfortunately, you're bringing your own bias into it.
Mhm.
So you're going to lead the team in the direction that you want to go, and maybe and that's going to be good for the clinic, but is it in the best interest of the clinic for you to be the person that's really guiding it instead of the leadership team being the ones who are guiding it and kind of taking it off your plate? So, yeah, I can see a big difference between those two situations, those two different scenarios. When you're involved, that brings your own bias to the table, and it also doesn't allow you to think. Maybe your thoughts are a little muddled. You're thinking about the present instead of the future, which is what the
Hmm.
annual strategic planning session should be about. You're thinking about just getting through the day and hitting all the targets and on or the checklist of the planning session instead of thinking about big picture things, which you should be focused on.
Another thing that I thought was really cool that I learned from you, you don't have to have a lot of goals. I think we walked away from the meeting with like 5 goals,
Yeah,
maybe for the whole year.
right.
5 goals. We talked about a ton of things,
Totally.
but we got like 5 main goals down on paper. And like, could you
Is that
imagine?
different from what you experienced in the past? Do you usually come away with like 8 or 10 goals or something?
Yeah, way too many. I
Oh,
realized like we have way too many goals. Like we were breaking them down to departments and like
mm,
just like I can see how getting real like being willing to prioritize what's most important is really hard and like there's levels to that, right? So yeah, I felt like I learned a lot there
mhm.
about with that.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned through the last couple sessions that I've done um, is sometimes there can be a goal that is more of a result than it is a particular goal. Say, for example, profit margin of 20%,
Mm-hmm.
right? Want a profit margin of 20%. Yeah, that is a good goal, but it could be a result of something else. And for example, the coaching call that I had this morning, this client, she's killing it in Texas, and but her profit margins aren't where she wants them to be, and she knows that her team productivity rate slash utilization percentage isn't where it should be. Maybe it's in the 60s or 70s when it should be in the 80s. um and so I asked her what are some of her priorities or goals would be for the next year. And she says, well, I want to get that productivity level up and I want to get my profit margin to this level. And so I had to say, well, the profit margin is going to be a result of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that your profit margin will get where you want it to go if you get your productivity level up to an 80, 85, 90% utilization rate or productivity rate. And so you can keep that, you can keep watching the profit margins, but I think the greater work and what the way you're going to work with your team isn't going to be surrounding the profit margin. What you're going to work on your team with is production,
Mm-hmm.
getting that productivity rate. If we hit those productivity markers, then your profit margin will get to where you want it to go. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we can mistake some of the end results for priorities, or instead of other key stats to focus on that represent a bigger picture of what needs to be worked on. I hope I was clear on that. Wasn't too muddy, but that's what I've experienced the last couple times.
Yeah, for sure. So we call that input goals. I
Mm,
don't know if that's the right thing, but that's what we call it in our team.
right.
So what we'll do is we'll get all of our stuff on the board and we'll just continue to ask the question like, what's the input? What's the
Mm,
input? What's the input? And so you make the goals around the input. Your inputs will dictate your outputs,
right.
right?
Mm,
Your inputs will dictate the results. So make your goals less about the results and make them more about what actions can you commit to inputting into your business,
yeah.
because you can control that,
Mhm,
right? You can control that parameter,
mhm.
right? So focus on the inputs and the outputs happen.
Yeah, because it's appropriate to have a profit margin goal, right? It's appropriate to have a gross revenues goal, but what's going to drive you to that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it production? Is it better collections? Is it, I mean, that represents so many things. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
getting a little bit more specific as to what's going to drive us to that profit margin would be a more appropriate priority. Like we could definitely get to a certain monthly figure, you name it. But is it going to be due to more new patients? Is it going to be due to more, or is it going to be due to a better compliance rate on cancellations, that kind of stuff? And so it is good to kind of focus on, it's good to focus on the bigger picture things, but it's important to narrow down to what's going to really make those goals come to pass.
Right. What gets the tire moving?
Right.
Right. What gets the tire moving? Let's focus there.
Yeah, you know what I found, and tell me if you had this. I know you're past this stage, I believe, in your own ownership, but what I find often in newer PT businesses, and this might be speaking to small business as a whole, but typically one of the top priorities ends up being building out policy and procedure manuals. Was that a priority that usually came up in your first few years?
Yeah. So I, yes, not so much during the annual plan, but I got lucky. I say I got lucky, but everybody's got a different journey. And I believe that I got into coaching pretty early in
You
my
did.
journey,
Yeah, you did.
right? So it was like maybe a year after ownership, I got into own. So, I was less than 2 years into ownership and I found myself in this place where I was like not treating patients anymore.
Mhm.
So I was like, this is crazy. Like, what do I do with all my time?
Now what do
So
I
like, so I remember I asked Nathan, I said, do you think I should just like write down everything I do on paper? And Nathan was like, immediate head nod, like, yes, you should already have that.
yesterday?
And so, like, I just literally locked myself in a room for like 3 months and wrote down every single thing on paper, bounded it together, put a cover on it, and created a manual.
Mhm.
Um, so, all that to say, I never really got to a place where I never found myself starving for policy and procedure because I was very proactive about it,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Safe to say that your growth was easier because you had that in
A
place.
100%, 100%. Now, I will also say that every single year we go through every policy
Mm.
every year. So, like
Just to review, make sure
every
it's up to
single
date.
year, we go through every policy. We start at the front desk, patient walks in, we go through the whole patient life cycle, and we clean it up. It's usually around Q2 when we start that.
Mm.
Q1's more like get started and kind of stuff. Yeah, your systems are key. So reviewing those, and you know what? We always make massive improvements.
Mm.
Always. We
That's
always find things, oh, we can cut this out or we can automate this or like,
mm.
yeah, why are we doing that this way? Every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's cool that you make it such a living document like that. I think that's huge because typically those policy and procedures collect dust. An employee handbook, if you're not telling the team to go back to it and reference it when they have questions, it's going to collect dust. So it has to be a living document. And the beauty of that is also, and you haven't witnessed this yet, but you will, is when someone comes to purchase your practice, you're gonna be able to say, here, you just hand that over, and there's value to that. You will see increases in the multiple that's applied to your EBITDA in the offer because you have solid policy and procedures. You have a leadership team that's following it, and it's not you running everything all the time, but people outside of you so they can cut you out and things keep running. And
mm.
it's all because of that policy and procedure work that you put into place.
Yeah, our thing is we get our systems dialed in and then we try to grow so fast until we run out of money. you know, or we try to grow so fast until we run out of money or break it. And then
Right.
it's like, all right, well, I guess we got to fix it. So then we fix it. And then we get some money and then grow again, right?
Well, it's worked out well for you thus far.
Yeah, yeah. I think so.
So before we get too far, so I'll just walk through a little bit about how we went through it and how I typically go through it with people. But um, we'll establish the rules. We do our one word open. Turn off the phones. We'll set up timers to make sure we run it like 50-minute sprints and give ourselves 50 to 60-minute sprints and gives ourselves time to refresh for 5 or 10 minutes before we hit back at it again. And then we'll typically get into talking about reviewing the past year. What goals did we have? What did we hit? What did we like about it? What we didn't like? What are our goals for this next year? Setting up the ideal scene, right? So at the end, if we're having this conversation at the end of 2024 or whatever year you're in, what would the clinics, what would the company have to look like in order to say this was a huge monumental success? We achieved all our goals. And so we write all those down, right? Get clear on those. Um, we also then will go through purpose and values and our mission and make sure we'll just have a, if those aren't established, maybe it's time to talk about establishing them. If any of them are not clear or maybe not appropriate anymore and need to be edited, that's a time to do it as well. But the main idea of going through the purpose and values is say, how are we doing? Where are we falling short? What can we commend ourselves for? But are these, do we still hold these true? And if there's any place where where we are falling short, where do we need to address? So it's appropriate to use this annual session as a time to reflect on those. Then we get into it. It's a SWOT analysis, like many people have done before. We write down all our strengths. We shared those with each other in our session. Shared the weaknesses, shared those with each other. Shared the opportunity. Took 5 minutes to write down our opportunities, and then shared those with each other. Another 5 to 10 minutes to talk about the threats. Inevitably, we'll have some things that are very similar and some things that are completely different. And then the idea is to then start establishing priorities. And I don't know if this was new to you, this exercise, but where we would reword the threats and the weaknesses in into strengths and opportunities, right? So I'm trying to think of do you recall a weakness that we approached and had to reword by chance?
I don't.
That's fine. I'll just bring up something that's typical, and that is, a weakness is it's hard to find physical therapists.
Right. We don't have enough therapists.
Don't have enough providers, right?
Mhm.
Need more providers. So you would simply reword that into a strength and say, we have plenty of providers coming through our doors asking to work at our clinics, right? And as it relates to recruiting, you name it. And so then after we've reworded all of those, then it's time to break those down into the four or five, three, four, five top priorities. Some of them are duplicates. Some of them are like, that's more of a project versus a year-round goal or priority. Cross these out. And then we'd have to like just decide what are our top. Some of them are good ideas, but maybe they're not in the top 3 to 5. And we come up with our top 5 priorities for the year. And that took us a while. Probably took us about a half hour, maybe more. And if there's more people on the team, it might require some more discussion. That'll take a while. And then we do something called the priority star to determine how to organize those priorities 1 through 5. And then after we establish the hierarchy of priorities, establish goals with them. What do we want to see? What does the completion of this priority look like in terms of a measurable goal? And put a deadline to it, put an owner to it, put a
Mhm.
singular person in charge of that, and then um, set up some milepost markers, milepost goals. By quarter 1, we should be here. By quarter 2, we should be here. Quarter 3, etc. And also some 30-day baby steps. So in the next 30 days, by the end of January, by the end of February, I'm going to accomplish this. After we gotten through that, what we come away with is the top 3 to 5 priorities for the company for the year, the goals that are in place, the owner of that goal, the deadlines, and next steps. And that should guide leadership team meetings for the next year.
Right.
Those should be addressed every week, however
Mhm.
often you're meeting, every week to make sure. And the owner of each priority/goal would report on their progress on a weekly basis. And so that's the benefit of it. You come away with the top priorities, you come away with owners and measurable goals and milepost markers to hit along the way. And so the owners can say, this is where we're at, this is my next step. I'm on target, and move on.
It's so hard to see the value in doing that when you're busy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like getting just being just like doing take an hour break from work If you ask owners nowadays, like, hey, can you just like take a break? It's like it's hard for them to take a break, much less ask them to take a whole day off to
Well, I was
work
going
on.
to say it took us what, 5, 6 hours
Yeah, and we
to do
have
that.
like three people on our team, four people
Yeah.
on our team, right? So
Mm.
like we have a small gig
Right.
now, but it's like you never really appreciate the value of that until after you walk away from that, and
Mm.
then like the preceding 30 to 60 days following it.
Mhm.
Because man, I could tell you what, we started this gig PTO club. I don't remember when it was. It was like sometime in the middle of last year.
Mhm.
And we got our purpose and values dialed in, and we set some goals, and then we kind of just took off,
Right.
right?
Right.
And really we used a lot of grit, determination, and hustle to kind of get where we are today. And we found we had a ton of success. Like we have a bunch of clients joining our program. People are crushing it. Then towards the end of the year, we got stagnant,
Mhm.
right? We got stagnant because we kind of lost focus, and we were like, okay, what are we doing again? Where are we at again? And then we had our annual strategic meeting, and now guess what? We're back on fire. We both got things on our plate. We're freaking knocking things out, So it's like it's fun again, right? Something amazing happens whenever you can get everybody aligned and moving in the same direction. I mean, I
Right.
tell that to people all the time. It's like it's not the marketing strategy, it's not the Facebook ads, it's not the CEUs, it's not the location of your practice. It's getting clear and getting your team aligned around your vision. That that is the key.
Mm.
That's the key.
Yeah. And we were talking before I pushed record how owners can see all the things they need to do and they all have the same level of importance. They all have the same hair on fire urgency level, right? And without having some of that foundation, having established some of that foundational work to be clear about what your annual priority is, not what your priority is for that day, but what your annual priority is. That's what should determine what you're doing that day, not your email list and not the providers coming and knocking on your door. Hey, I need this or that. Um, your annual priorities that you established when you had a clear head are those things that should be driving your day-to-day behaviors and give you, and you don't have to remember them anymore, or don't have to think about it. You can just recall back to your notes, your experience, and
Right.
say, that's what I need to do today. So I know that I'm going to meet my metrics by the end of the year if I just give some attention to blank today or this week, right? And make sure that gets done so you can know that you're making progress towards that thing. And that's where a lot of owners get burnout. They get a lot of anxiety, is because all the things are important. I got to do all the things. And sometimes what they'll default to are the simpler tasks or the technical tasks that come easier to them and not as hard, which is treat patients, pay bills, right? Do documentation. That's not going to get you where you want to go by the end of the year.
Right.
Those things
Right.
are important, but as a business owner, you have a greater responsibility to the business, right? And the health and the vision and the growth of the business. That's your core responsibility. Those other
Mhm.
things are secondary, honestly. So, a strategic planning session that sets clear priorities and goals will help you maybe minimize your anxiety a little bit and give you a clearer head as to what needs to be done to achieve your goals.
Right. So it's a tool, just like all these things are. But I love what you said, how you design it. You pre-design it.
Mm.
You pre-design it. Pre-design your year, pre-design your month, pre-design your week, pre-design your day, pre-design your work setting. You don't do it while you're doing the work. You do it before the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
you think, then you plan, then you do. Not do, then kind of plan in the middle and think, right? You think, plan, do, right? So, um, when you can get your play, when you can kind of like step out and like let the emotions settle, get 8 hours of sleep, go get a massage, wake up early, go for a walk, listen to a good book, come in charged, excited about the day, and really have this energy and this creative headspace to like be creative and design and like think about what you really want to do in your business. That's the perfect time to do it, right?
Mhm.
So once you design that, what comes from that is like clarity on what you really want.
Mm.
Then what happens is we go to work and we get things get crazy. Phones start ringing, people start quitting and right. And then anxiety and overwhelm and stuff starts to build up. And as soon as you feel that, you're like, hey, I'm actually getting a little worked up right now. That's the perfect time to stop, pull out your notes, and get really clear on what you decided your priority was and commit to that. Recommit to that, right? So I love that part. I love what you said. I think that the brain work, the thinking work is the work that most of us tend to avoid because it's the hardest thing to do. And our default is to go into hustle mode
Mhm.
because it's what we know. We know how to hustle. We know how to run around, treat patients and bill and get those units in and sell that plan of care
Mhm.
and use all of our physical energy to get things done. But that's not how you grow a business, right?
It's not going to move the business
We
forward.
got to do the brain work. The brain work is where the money's at, you know?
Right, right, right. The there was a caption in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week, that absolutely uh, smacked me across the face, figuratively. As I read it, he said in a caption, I had to underline it. I've reread it and mentioned it a number of times, maybe not on this podcast, but with people. But busyness, people like to wear busyness as like a badge of honor. I'm
I know
busy.
it's a disease, man.
Everyone's busy. Everyone's
Yeah,
busy.
I'm
And
guilty of it.
sometimes you want to show people that you're busier than they are.
Mm-hmm.
I've got this, and this going on. Um, and so he said busyness is a sign of just being mentally lazy because you're not clear. You haven't taken the time to be clear about how to get things done and what things are of greatest priority. So if you take the time to think about it, and in his situation, he's talking about particularly offloading things that you're not expert at to third parties who are expert at it will save you money in the future. Yeah, but doing a little bit of work like that or spending the time like you did on a policy and procedure manual will save a lot of headaches and questions down the road because you put some effort into that. But simply being busy means that you're not looking through all of the things that you have before you and prioritizing them accordingly to say, I need to spend more time here and more time here, and I don't need to spend time over here, or
Mm-hmm.
I can offload that thing over there to someone else, or that thing can wait another 30 days before I handle it. So I loved what Tim Ferriss said in 4 Hour Work Week about that. And and like we talked about before the push and record here, Alex Hormozy said something similarly in that he knows when he's anxious that he hasn't appropriately prioritized all that's before him. Is that, am I saying it right?
Yeah, yeah. Too many options, and you don't know which one to choose yet.
Yeah.
You're not clear on which one you should be choosing.
Yeah. You haven't made proper decisions,
Right,
right? So
right,
you've got all of these things before you and you don't know where to go. When you feel depressed, is a state in which you don't know if there are any other options.
right.
Yeah, you just think this is the whatever state you're in is the only option that you can even consider is when he finds himself in depression. And I think a lot of owners find themselves in that anxiety situation, number one, because so much is in front of them. But it can also lead to some depression because they think this is the only way that this issue can be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the beauty of coaching comes into play because that's where a coach says, well, there are these other options, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You might not like them, but what
You're
you're
not gonna
doing
like them most of the time. That's
most of
why
the
you're not doing them
that's
because you
why you're
don't like
not doing them. Yeah,
them.
and no one's
Exactly.
holding you accountable to do the stuff that you don't want to do. But
Exactly.
that's the beauty of coaching is to say, well, you actually have options. We just need to make a decision. And the faster you can make a decision, the more quickly your current state will change.
Yeah, and the first decision you have to make is to say no,
Mm.
no more.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard decision.
Yeah.
You gotta say no more. I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna step out of treatment. I'm gonna make the hire. I'm gonna spend the time. I'm gonna
Spend the money.
whatever it is that's your monster on the other end of the room that you're avoiding, like you need to go for it and you need to just do it, you know?
And that's hard
It's
because
hard, super hard.
even if you're suffering in mediocrity and and whatever you want to call it, fear, anxiety, at least you can be comfortable in that state because you know it. There's a lot of fear in the unknown. Well, what if I make that hire and they suck? What if I spend the money and it doesn't work out? Well, it's easy. So it's easier to just paralyze yourself and just say, well, I'll
Hmm.
just status quo, even though it sucks. At least I'm comfortable with it. I've become buddies with my anxiety and my fear, and I know
Yeah,
how to handle
screw that,
those
man.
somehow. But that's not going to get you. It's not going to get you your dreams. It's not going to get you what you want to accomplish.
Nope. It's going to be hard, but on the other side is everything you've ever wanted.
That's right. Right.
And it's more than just business, too.
Mhm.
It's your role in the family, like your ability to be a better father, a better mother, your ability to serve your team better, your ability to be a powerful leader. And like there's a lot on the other side of that fear that you're not leaning into, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting how much I've learned in business made me a better father,
Oh,
husband,
totally.
son, friend, you name it, where my communication skills are better. I'm I'd like to think I'm a little bit more humble
Yeah.
when it comes to like being the first to apologize and take
Uh-huh.
responsibility for a mistake that I made. And if we're going to plan things out, it's going to be planned differently now. And that really made a mark on me when my mentor, he told me that not only did he have values in his company, but he and his wife and children established family values.
Love that,
And
man.
they established their family values and they recited them every day. Like I have me and my family, we have family values because we I agree it's just as important to have family values. I didn't recite them every day like he did. And they would recite their family motto when they said hi and bye to each other and stuff. And I was like, all those business lessons translate.
Hmm.
You know, it's
Hmm.
not like you walk out the door of your business and all of that's left behind. You take that with you and you can learn a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah, and I think that this goes without saying, which I hope it does. It's like I still struggle with all of those the same problems, the same
Sure.
challenges. Like I find myself avoiding work all the time,
All the time.
all the time. Like I'm like, God, I'm avoiding work. I'm avoiding that thing that I'm just tired of doing, that I'm kind of like kind of doing, but not fully committed to doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I find myself there all the time. And I think the difference now is that I'm aware of it, right? I'm aware of it and I've gone through the experience of becoming aware of it and overcoming that.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps me just be a better person. Because right, like
Yeah.
because I'm more aware of like what who I am, and what I don't like to do and what I
Yeah.
do like to do.
That really struck me in Brene Brown's Daring Greatly. She talked about, I think she was talking about procrastination or something to that regard. But when you are, when you find yourself doing the like streaming a social media site or YouTube or, playing a game on your phone, I find myself doing this all the time, thinking to myself, what am I avoiding right now that
Mm-hmm.
needs to get, what am I avoiding that needs to be addressed?
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of purposefully thinking about, I've checked my list of things that I wanted to accomplish this day. I'm happy with what I did and I'm ready to close the book on the day. And then bringing up my phone and doing something, it usually ends up being like, oh, I finished a task, grab my phone, da, 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 waste an hour and then come back and be like, oh, that's right. I need to get some more stuff done. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there are, I like what you said in that it's important for us to be aware that some of those tactics are simply distractions and they are avoidance mechanisms to what truly needs to get done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's important for us to be aware of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have an exercise in our coaching program, which I kind of robbed from another guy who taught me, but it's establishing your non-negotiables,
Mm,
which basically is a an exercise where you define like who you really want to be and what you want to commit to and what's really important in your life, and choosing to prioritize that, right? And part of some of that's going to be family and mental health and physical health and eating healthy and reading books, right?
right.
But like the quiet time and the quiet thinking time, like annual strategic planning, is the health. That's where the health of your business is developed,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And the thing about life and the thing about busyness is the first thing that we sacrifice is our own health or our business health. It's the first thing that we sacrifice, right? Like,
Sure.
how many times have you started an exercise routine or a diet or like whatever that you wanted to commit to, which I'm sure many people who are listening have set big goals that they want to commit to this year, right? And it's like, what happens? It's like we're good for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe we're 80% in, 4 weeks. Oh, I got busy. I'll have a cupcake, right? It's like the first thing we sacrifice is our health, right? And so, if there's any lesson to be learned here, it's like the first sign that you're going off track is when you start to jeopardize your health and your business health specifically,
Hmm.
right? So like it's the most important thing. Take care of yourself, take care of your business, and everything else will follow, right?
Right. Yeah, I like to say your love language for your business is quality time.
Yeah.
And you need to give it time. And when I say quality time, I'm not talking about going into the office and cleaning the toilets but before everyone gets there, and that kind of stuff. And it's more of working on the business like it's a real business, and demanding profit from your business and pulling the proper levers to get the profit, to develop culture, being intentional about the culture that you want to create, and creating systems and processes so these things can live in without you. Like, you can be gone for a couple weeks and they still run
A
fluidly.
month.
Right, a
On
month at
for a
least.
month.
Right. And so that's the important part of working on your business. And that's to bring it back around. That's where, when you get an annual strategic plan session, you take all those things that are in front of you that you could be doing, boil them down to the things that are most appropriate for this time of your business to move it forward.
So I think it would be super important to talk about a few um, other things that we can do to make sure that we maintain focus throughout the year,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we're referencing we reference the book Traction by Gino Wickman all the time.
Hmm.
We probably say it every other podcast. So like if you haven't read it, read it. In fact, chapter 3 will basically outline exactly how to do an annual strategic plan, like in detail. And I read chapter 3 of Traction every year, every
Hmm.
single year. Um, but there are many other principles in that book that um, what he calls the entrepreneurial operating system, the EOS,
Right.
right? And so part of it is not only writing the goals and priorities down, but we write them down on one place and everybody uses the same piece of paper,
Hmm.
right? Either electronically or or pen to paper. But like the thing is like when there are notes and updates to be made, they're not made on your paper.
Hmm.
They're made on this paper, the
Right.
team's paper that everybody shares, right?
Right.
So there's no hiding, there's no like things getting lost in the weeds. Like everybody, the communication channel is the same. So making sure that you're using one system to update on the priorities is really, really important. Number two is, like you mentioned, meeting every single week. Like put it on the schedule. The meeting's Tuesday at 1 o'clock or whatever, Monday at 9 o'clock, every single week. And you have to be committed to pulling out that piece of paper and saying, okay, team, everybody, we're going to go around the room and everybody's going to update us on where we're at and what we
Hmm.
can expect on the priorities. And if you just do those two things, like you're just creating an environment of accountability and
Totally.
transparency,
That's huge.
right? And it's like you can't like how are you and your team what more powerful tool that you can do is to actually create a team that holds each other accountable.
Hmm.
You're like, if you have a team that you love and you trust and that you're really trying to like help, and on Monday you're gonna have to get up there and talk about how you didn't do XYZ like you said you were gonna do, like that's a
Yeah.
hard thing.
Right.
There's like an intrinsic drive that'll naturally evolve, and your culture will develop to
Mhm.
help things get moving a lot quicker. So those are two tips that I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I broke down, and it took me a few minutes to break down the agenda for that, um, for our session. And yeah, plenty of people might aren't in a situation where they can write that down. You can definitely go to Traction. You can reach out to me as well, Nathan at ptoclub.com, and I can share with you my guidelines for it. Um, and so I really, there are opportunities to get these done, and you don't have to figure out the agendas yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah. What we would recommend is if you have a leadership team of you and at least one or two other people, maybe it's time to have someone outside of yourself to lead that conversation. And if it's just you, that's fine. I'd recommend you do it with a coach so you get some feedback and have someone to hold you accountable to those goals and deadlines down over the course of the year so that you have someone to report to. Um, but you can do it by yourself just as easily.
100%. 100%.
All right, man. Well, I think we covered a lot of it. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that kind of a boring topic, depending on if you're looking for something flashy. This is not flashy, and most of the time, success is not flashy. It's usually boring work.
It's the hard work.
That's why business coaching is hard to market, because it's like we're going to show you how to do boring things
We're going to make you do a bunch of stuff you don't want to
that you
do.
don't want to do. It's like
Well, isn't that the story of physical therapy? We're going to make you do all kinds of exercises you never wanted to
you
do,
hate coming
and it's
here.
going to hurt.
You will
Aren't
hate
you
me.
excited?
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
We're used
Yes.
to that. We're used.
But I would say, I remember, and I tell this story a few times. I've told this to a few clients, but I remember us having a conversation. It was me, you, and I think maybe Will.
Mhm.
And I can't remember. There was a few people on a call, and we talked a little bit about the most important. What is the most important thing that you can develop or create this year to, most likely correlate you to success or towards these goals or towards your goals?
Mhm.
And you said alignment of your leadership team.
Mhm.
Alignment of your leadership team. And that has stuck with me to this day. Like being able to develop alignment and basically take your vision out of your head and getting it to on a in a place where your team can actually see it like
Mhm.
you see it,
Mhm.
and have an opportunity to like raise their hand and say like, yeah, I see that, and I want to be a part of it,
Right.
and I'm committed to it, and I'm open to you holding me accountable to it. And like developing that in your company is like, man, if you just take a day, you would go to the moon. Your
Hmm.
company would go to the moon.
Yeah. I think it's called investment, right? This isn't
Yeah.
quote unquote productive time, but it's investing in your business and investing in the right things in your business. And if there's people out there who are wondering how they can improve their culture, the culture of their business, it's this is where that kind of stuff starts.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you meet together, when you have a team, when you are intentional about your growth and you're intentional about implementing values and living out your purpose and that kind of stuff. That's when you really start to see alignment and growth. And it's hard; it's almost impossible to measure, but you will see the growth from it. Right.
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't guarantee a lot of things, but I guarantee that if you decide to focus on your priorities this year, you will grow. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why the world is the way it is, but that's what it is. Like if you just focus on it, and if you need any help with that, please like shoot me a DM, email me, Adam at ptoclub.com. we've developed a system to where like we can show you exactly what stage of business you're in, depending on the size of your business, this, the income that you have coming in and out of your business. And we can help you get very, very clear on exactly what your priorities are, what you need to focus on so that you can grow. Most of our clients are growing at between 40 and 60% annually.
Mhm.
So don't miss out. You can do it too.
Definitely. Yeah. Reach out to Adam at ptoclub.com, me, Nathan at ptoclub.com. Check out the website, ptoclub.com, if you want to do a discovery call with the both of us, because you can book a call there and talk to us a little bit about business, which we love to do. And make sure if you haven't yet, join the 600 plus other PT owners on the Facebook group, Physical Therapy Owners Club Facebook group. So you can get on there and ask questions and share wins, et cetera, et cetera. But we'd love to see more of you. That's for sure. Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining today. It's good to get back on the horse, get out
Yes.
some content.
Let's kick some butt.
Yeah, this will be an awesome year.
All right, brother.
See you, man.